President Trump's expected nominee to the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. He says he regrets calling for Fed Chair Jay Powell to step down and more hopes for the chance to win over his critics. Joining us from Chicago is Andy Busch, former CFTC Chief Market Intelligence Officer. He made these comments, by the way, in an interview with the New York Times, and also said he would cut interest rates by 50 basis points tomorrow if he was actually on the Fed. You have been in Washington. You've worked in Washington. Does Moore have a prayer here?
Of course he does. You've seen at least 3 members of the Senate Banking Committee come out and support Shelby, Scott, and Crapo. So that's very helpful when you're trying to get a nominee through. Doesn't mean the Dems aren't going to come out and say he's not qualified, but there's a good chance
it's not just the Dems here, Andy. I mean, there is a long list of conservative and Republican economists who are not supportive of him, no less than Greg Mankiw, who was an advisor to George W. Bush, saying he does not support this nomination.
Yeah, I saw that as well. And let me frame this up for everybody. I mean, we've had a lot of economists and super smart guys on the Federal Reserve Board, and they've got us to where we're at right now. Let's make sure we understand that in the sense of the Fed engaged in this great experiment of quantitative easing, which was fantastic. After a slow start, they got going. But this isn't over yet. We have to get our way out of it, and that's where the rubber meets the road. Jay Powell, I think, is a wonderful Federal Reserve chairman.
But back up. Moore doesn't want them to get out of it. He wants them to cut rates more.
Well, let me finish. That's a great point, no doubt. But what I'm saying is this. This is what Jay Powell has to deal with, right? The mess that was left by Bernanke and Yellen. Somebody has to clean this up, right? Jay Powell is the guy at the end of the circus parade with the broom and the shovel, right? And that's what he's faced with. So when Steve Moore made his criticism back in December, as you've already heard, Steve, I think feels remiss that he said that. But I also want to take you back to 2015 when Moore was calling for the Fed to raise rates. And that's come under some criticism today, I think. And I would just put it out there. There were a lot of people criticizing the Fed back in 2015, myself included,
Andy,
to raise rates because we felt that they were being too cautious. So now that's what we have to face right
Andy,
now.
we can devote a whole half hour to whether the Fed did the right thing or wrong thing in 2008, 2009, 2010.